Hey everyone, editing Vahagan here. I just wanted to say before starting the episode that the if my audio does cut out a couple times on my microphone, it doesn't affect my guests in this conversation. It's still a lovely conversation, which is why I'm still posting it. But please be understanding that sometimes my audio will cut out. The mixture of my noise gate and the fact that my voice was not perfectly great because of a lot of excess smoke that we got in Laos. So without further ado, enjoy the show. You're experiencing the Authentic Chaos Podcast, an exploration into our inner selves and journeys of self-discovery. I'm your host, Vahagan Yarnosian, and today in beautiful Van Vieng, Laos, I am joined by Elle Mills.
Hello, thanks for having me.
Thank you for joining me. Elle is actually the tour manager of the tour I'm doing with Contiki.
That's right. So far, he's been pretty good.
Oh,
we still
thank you.
have a long way to go, so time will tell.
Well, it's a good thing you mentioned that since my parents do watch this.
Very well behaved.
So, Elle, would you like to tell a little bit about yourself to our audience?
Sure. So, as Vahagan mentioned, I work for Contiki, which is a tour company for 18 to 35-year-olds. I'm really lucky that I get to travel around Asia for work. So, I take care of 9 countries. There's a lot to see and do, but I get to experience it through everyone, which I love. But I've done a lot of jobs. I've lived in Australia, the United States, which is where my accent kind of comes from. However, I'm a born and bred New Zealander, as we call ourselves Kiwis. So that's where my heritage is, and that's where I call home. But now Thailand and most of Asia are my home.
That's lovely. So, where would you say this love of travel came from? This passion to travel?
I didn't actually have a passion for travel until I was in my mid to late 20s. I had grown up with a lot of traveling just because of my father's work. So he didn't have a very exciting job, but he was an IT programmer. People think I was a military brat, but no, just my dad liked computers, and he got a few job offers in the United States when we were younger. We ended up moving a lot over in the United States. So I think growing up with that nomadic kind of lifestyle just made it more comfortable for me to travel. But I was brought up with the whole sense of get married young, have the kids, be the wife, and all that stuff, which I didn't align with, but I tried to force. And then went through a breakup, as you do in your mid-20s, and I decided to book my first solo trip, and the rest is history.
That's really fascinating because Dan, our last guest on the podcast, mentioned that a breakup also kind of sparked his journey into traveling the world. And so, what do you think about the breakup really got you to find this love of travel?
I think, especially when you're in a long-term relationship, and this is, of course, from my personal experience, but seeing a few others come on tour, you do find yourself codependent in relationships, and you're always feeding off what the other person needs, and you don't have that freedom as much. Obviously, you do have that compatibility and camaraderie in a relationship, so it's different. But when you have that breakup, it's a sudden surge of you're by yourself, and what can you do by yourself, and are you locked into anything? You don't have to check in with a partner. Do you want to go out this weekend? Do we need to see your parents? You have this huge sense of just self-awareness of like, I could just do anything. And so I think that's why a lot of people, including myself, have this moment of, well, I'm just going to book a trip. I'm going to go overseas. I'm going to try a new hobby or something. So you pick up these wonderful habits of doing something just for yourself and not worrying about anyone else. And it's really, I get a lot of people on my tours who have just gone through pretty bad breakups, and seeing them grow and find themselves again without having that reliance on a partner is beautiful. It's really, really cool to see.
Yeah, and undoubtedly you play a part in kind of that you're like enabling them and allowing them to have like an excellent time to experience what they need to, maybe not what they need to experience, but find those experiences experiences that they find that they need.
I definitely try. I think because I booked my first Contiki after the breakup,
Oh, really?
so I know exactly like what I was feeling on that. You know, you're nervous, you're doing something solo for the first time, you don't have that partner that was kind of your encouragement and your support system. And you go on these tours, whether it's Contiki or another group travel, and you find this beautiful community of sometimes other people who are going through the same thing or people who are just by themselves and looking for adventure, and you get this beautiful connection and you realize that you have these connections and it doesn't have to be romantic, it doesn't have to be these lifelong relationships that are committed, and you can have these beautiful chapters in a book, as I call them.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. I think that kind of is similar to how I view relationships at this point in my life. Like, everything ends. Everything is transient.
Yes.
Every relationship, whether romantic or platonic or familial, has a start and an end. And the point is to just enjoy that journey. We don't really know when these things will end. Just like this trip will eventually end.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean that I'm not enjoying it now and I'm not experiencing like living through the present of this trip.
Oh, 100%. I couldn't agree more. I think some people are scared of things ending, and not realizing that I see life as a book, as I just described, and some people contribute a sentence or a paragraph. Some people are full chapters, but you are the book, so you need to make sure you fill those pages how you want. Like, don't let someone else write your story. It's your story.
Yeah, I like that. Yeah, don't let anyone else write your story.
Yeah.
I think that's an important aspect of this. 'Cause, like, even if you can even travel the whole world without really like putting a page in that book.
Oh, it's so true. And some people are just waiting for life to happen to them, for someone to give them the narrative. But I think when you start finding yourself in your book, and you can find out how you fill those pages and what excites you and where your passions go and where your hobbies are, that's when your book's exciting. And having the people and the souls that you meet along the way add just really good bits to your story. And it's not to say that even the sad bits, there's always a good outcome the next chapter. So there's got to be the ebbs and flow, and you just got to ride with it sometimes.
Yeah, I like to say that we wouldn't be where we are today without both the triumphs and the tribulations of the past.
It's so true. Yeah, you need a bit of the rocky bits to make sure you appreciate the good bits.
Yeah, and just like practically, like we would be totally different people if like things had gone differently.
Yeah, I mean, it's the butterfly effect, isn't it?
Yeah.
One flap of the butterfly wing and things change. So it's good to go through the bad things, but realize that that too will end. That page will turn. There's something on the other side. So you can dwell on it. You can feel those emotions. You can write out that chapter, but make sure you're turning the page.
Yeah. I think, okay, that's actually a really excellent analogy because how I've started viewing emotions as like scenes that need to play out. And it's common in like our culture to want like the good scenes to last forever. The bad scenes, we just try to flip by those. We fast forward.
Yeah.
But like really, we're not doing it much because the good scenes end up ending at some point, and the bad scenes keep coming back.
That's true. And I think if people don't recognize the bad scenes for what they are, they get stuck in them and they don't know exactly how to escape them.
What do you think is like how? So you say if they don't recognize them for what they are, what's an example of what they would be or like what they are?
For the bad scenes?
Yeah.
I mean, I do see some of my friends who I do love and care about, and they get stuck in these either bad workplaces, bad relationships, even bad friendships. But they're so stuck in that chapter, they don't know that there needs to be an end to it. They don't know that they have the control to stop that page writing. They need to understand that it served its purpose. It's not getting any better, and they need to start figuring a way to change that. But it's very comforting to sometimes be in the same cycle. So it's hard to see, and sometimes when you're in it, you never know until you're out.
Yeah. How do you think you got around to like? How do you think you get around to seeing like when you're in one of these cycles?
Experience. I've had a very turbulent road to where I am today, and I think having those really rock bottom moments where you don't know who you are, what you're doing. I was homeless at one point, so the rock bottom there.
That must have been really tough.
Yeah, and it's something that I guess now people wouldn't really recognize as who I am today, because I knew at that moment I was in my car for about a month, living in my car. I had such shame about it, and I hid it away from everyone. I still went to the restaurant I worked at, but at night I would have to go to the gym and take showers and sleep in the library of my university. And I think recognizing that's the low, that's the hard part, and I know where that is. I know where I don't want to ever be again. So going to that rock bottom, and I pulled myself out of it. I knew that I can't stay in this. I won't stay in this. And pulling myself up, knowing that there's another side. I was like, okay, I can do this. There is hope. And just never letting it overwhelm me or do a woe is me pity party. It's very, very easy to get in that. And I don't shame anyone for it, because it's rough.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, I mean, we all go through like difficulties in our lives. Like this life, there is no instruction manual for it. There's no like guide. Like if you're lucky if you have a mentor to like help you out in times when times are tough, or like some sort of support system. But I feel like in this world that is increasingly interconnected, we are more and more isolated from each other in our communities. It makes it difficult to like find that safety net.
it's very true. And I was lucky when that time happened, there wasn't as much presence of social media, but I would see nowadays on social media, it is so pristine and curated, and
Yeah.
it probably does make people retreat more into their, their bad times in their life, because they don't want to reach out. Although there's, I think, a lot more awareness with mental health, and I love that. These still, I think social media has its benefits and also the detractors as well, of like connection to people.
Yeah, and I'd say also connection to self.
Oh yeah.
Like for me, like my rock bottom may not have been like being homeless or anything like that. I'm fortunate enough to have had like stability in that area. But like I think a lot of mine came from like just feeling lost, like emotionally.
Yeah.
I didn't understand myself, and that I was kind of just lost in my own life, and like didn't know where to go from there.
I think a lot of people would relate to that as well, because especially I feel like in our 20s now, maybe our parents' generation used to hide it a bit more. They were really good at that, but not in a healthy way, I don't think.
Yeah.
But I feel that with ourselves, we are being a bit more open to when we are having maybe like instead of midlife crisis, like a mid-20s crisis, and not in a sense of career all the time, but that does come into play. But just you are changing. You think about like everything you go through, and your life changes, your perspectives change, and then you start questioning like, who am I? What am I doing?
And those are some of the scariest questions you can ask yourself, because then you start to question everything you've done up to that point, and then the shame comes back, and all those bad emotions and feelings that you put pause on for all those years, they start flooding back in. And you realize you can't run away from these ghosts. You have to address them until they no longer become those ghosts.
Yeah, I think that's so good though, because you do need to address them sometimes when they come up, because you can shove them in a closet all you want, but that closet gets full.
It gets full and they leak. It leaks a lot.
Yeah, and that's a floodgate sometimes that you're not equipped to deal with.
And it happens it can happen when you least expect it, or when you least want it. I've had moments where like I've been with friends and we've been like in like a state that like we should be happy in, like, but like they're focused on things of the past, just unfinished business that they never got to conclusion in within themselves. They're just waiting for either the universe to give them that conclusion, or I don't know, for it to just magically go away. But it never does, because that's not how our minds work. We like to replay a lot of these because it's like a survival mechanism, I feel like.
I would agree. Yeah, it definitely is a survival mechanism. I think our brain's like, not today. We'll deal with that later. And then all of a sudden, those not todays add up. Yeah. It's a scary thing. And in a way, I do that to a bigger level, where I have completely escaped reality. I live in what I call Neverland. So I am in a suspended reality where, I'm not dealing with what would be a normal social construct of society, where I live out of a suitcase most of my life, and I'm in a different country every week, or So sometimes I don't have to face those routine life issues that a lot of people do. You know, I don't know what a weekend is anymore, but so like people waiting for like the weekends or something, or having car issues, or or I have to see the in-laws, and those are things that are very now foreign to me because I don't have those kind of issues. My issues are very different. But so it's funny when my friends will complain about things that are going on.
Yeah.
And I'm like, just change it, because for me things are very easy to change now. For them it is a daily ritual that they're stuck in, which is harder to break than being out here where I am in a constantly like changing environment.
But do you think that all these external changes, just that your environment's changing so often, do you think that that's actually like keeping you from getting into any sort of routine? Or do you have some like you have like very different routines from other people, or different like kind of problems that stem from that? Sorry, that maybe that didn't make any sense.
No, I think I get what you mean. I would say it's different routines for me. Like what someone's morning routine might be is they wake up, have a shower, have a coffee, maybe I'll say read the newspaper. Who does that now? Probably scroll on Facebook.
Yeah, check Instagram or something. TikTok.
I need to update my reference there. But for me, like my little routines are a bit more spread out. So my routines when I get up is, think about the day ahead. Is I'm like, what am I organizing today? Who am I contacting? What timings do I need to do? But when I get to certain locations, I have little moments that I capture. So I know when I get to Chiang Mai in Thailand, in the northern part, I go to a little cafe and I have the same meal every time and the same drink. And I sit there and I just know that that's my moment. That's my routine. So I have little places that each time I get a little moment.
That sounds very grounding.
Oh, it's very grounding. Last night I had my baked camembert.
Ooh, oh yeah, you'd mentioned that.
So that's one of my little grounding things. So I just have these little moments, and that's a routine for me. It's more spread out, but I know, okay, we're good. This is my moment, because I give a lot of energy on trip. It's 27 people are on this one, so I'm giving And
you've got like multiple trips you're probably thinking about in advance. Like you mentioned, you were preparing for this some of these China trips, Japan.
Yeah, so you're always thinking of what you're currently doing, plus a few days ahead, plus your next trip, or the previous trip that you're still doing work for. So, your mind and energy is quite spread out. And if you don't manage it well in this job, it's going to kill you.
Yeah. How do you feel like you manage it?
It took a while. I think in my first year, burnout is probably the understatement of the year. I didn't know how to manage my energy, my time, and it took me a while to figure out I don't need to stay out until 2 a.m. with everyone. I might want to go to bed a bit earlier. It took a few months, and I was like, how is everyone doing this? I'm going to die. But eventually I learned when there is times that I can go out, enjoy myself, or when I need to just retreat back. I found times for when my reports are good to put in, when I can do a lot of my work in general. So I wasn't always playing catch up, just preparing better. So yeah, it is experience in this role as much as training can teach you the basics. A lot of it is just trial and error, and all of the tour managers have different ways of running trips, how we manage our time, manage groups. So we do help each other with our own tricks, but what works for you works for you.
Yeah. So do you feel like there was some like introspection required to like figure out what your like limits were, or when you need a rest versus when you can go out?
Yeah, I felt immensely guilty probably after the first 5 months of working. I felt so guilty that I was leaving early, or saying I'm not going to go to everything I suggest, and taking the group out for every single meal. And it was learning they also want their own time. I don't need to handhold all of them. They're all adults.
Yeah.
Which is, again, taking me a long time to realize. I felt like there was such a responsibility that I was responsible for every single person's excitement, happiness, joy, and having a positive experience. Some people will like this, some people won't. And now I'm okay with that. I can only do so much.
Yeah, I mean, you're only human.
Yes.
And you should forgive yourself for being human.
Yes, and that is a hard thing, because I am a perfectionist by nature, and I want to make sure that everyone around me is having the perfect time. But after, you burn out a few times, you're like, okay, I'm going to do so much. I can lead all of them to where I think would be good, and it's up to everyone else if they're going to enjoy it. I don't need to force that.
Yeah, exactly. 'Cause
Yeah.
even then, you don't know what they will enjoy versus
No.
what other people will enjoy. We're all like you said, we're all adults. We're all like our own people. We have our own feelings, and yeah, I think a lot of these like experiences and what people like take out of it the most is like entirely feelings based.
Yeah. And each group or individual is different. Some people love getting all the culture and the temples and that, or some people are focused on food. Some people are interested in doing all the activities and they want to get out like the exercise and viewpoints. Other people just want to lie by a pool and do
Yeah,
nothing.
and that's fine too.
Everything's
It's all their
fine.
vacation.
Exactly. I was like, this is your journey, and whatever your journey is right. There's no wrong answer to do this at all.
That's a beautiful sentiment. And I think some of the things you were just talking about are can be like applied to other things too. Like you don't need like we're talking here in the context of traveling and especially the like significant amount of traveling you do and monitoring people, but like that's not very relatable to like a lot of my audience.
No, sorry.
But I think there's a lot of lessons here that we can take away. Like because I've noticed in myself, even maybe on a much smaller scale, of like this feeling of guilt when I don't go out all the time with my friends.
Yeah.
Or like, and I think other people kind of feel that too. Of just like you want to be, maybe you want to be social all the time, but like sometimes you just don't feel like it.
Oh, yeah. I think that's so common in society, like FOMO.
Yeah.
The fear of missing out.
Yeah.
It's such a real thing, and I think we're afraid of missing out on like this unique moment that's going to happen that maybe creates new bonds with people,
Yeah, or a lasting memory.
Or that inside joke that you're just not in on, and they're
Yeah,
like, no, if you were there, you're like, ah.
Yeah.
So I think that's a very real thing, and even when I was back in Australia, I would always be trying to organize things for my friends because I wanted to be the one creating these memories, and I didn't want to be sidelined for things, and it's hard, but I mean, are you doing it to enjoy it, or are you doing it because you're just in an anxiety state of missing something?
Yeah, and I think that's an important like question to ask. And listeners of my podcast know I'm all about asking the questions. I'm never going to have the answers for anyone. I'm not going to be able to tell you how to find yourself.
Yes.
But I can ask these questions. And yes, I think like where is this guilt coming from? Where is this anxiety coming from? Usually these pains are coming from a place of a need that isn't being met somehow. In my own life, I've noticed like in the past when I was single, I was like constantly wanting to go out and like party and stuff. But then I'd get hit these walls where I would just be exhausted.
Oh, yeah.
And be like, oh, it's Friday night, I want to go out. But also, I don't want to go out. Now I've gotten to the point where I'm like, you know what? If I don't want to go out, I'm not going to go out. If I want to go out, I will go out.
Yeah, I think that's good though when you realize, okay, I can take some time for myself and have a fantastic night in.
Yeah.
I can put on some Netflix. I can do me. It's fine. Or if you do want to have those moments to go out, but it is that question of what is the purpose of me wanting to do anything? Like, is it because I think others will judge me for not going out, or am I thinking that I'm going to be missing out on everything because there's not enough moments in my life that are giving me that validation? It's a lot of things, and I think for each person, it's going to be individual.
Yeah. I mean, of course it's going to be. Yeah. I mean, these are all personalized, and that's
100%.
why no one can ever tell you
No.
how to live your life. No one can ever tell you how to like deal with these pains.
Mm-hmm.
Besides, just like, hey, just try to like face them, and like if you need the safety, if they become very vulnerable, if they become very painful, like therapy is there for a reason. Therapy has
Absolutely.
helped me significantly in like my own journey and giving me the ability to shift my perspective in safety.
Good. I think therapy is so beneficial, even if you're not sure why you're going. I think having those questions asked in a way that you haven't been asked by, friends and family aren't going to hit you with those hard questions all the time.
Yeah, yeah.
Or you don't want to really listen to them all the time. But I think having a therapist to bounce off of in that subjective nature is really, really important.
Yeah, yeah, it's huge. If anything, it helps you get an idea of like, hey, you're not alone in this.
Yeah. I think as well, like we get locked in our heads of feeling like, am I the only one doing this? Am I the, and you're like, and if you are, there's nothing wrong with that either. Like you might be the only one feeling that way, but also those feelings are valid and just as real as anyone else having different feelings. So
Yeah.
I think it's good if you can feel that community around, if you are having an anxiety and dealing with that. I dealt with it for many years, and now I've found my peace with it. I've done a lot of work on it. But yeah, sometimes my anxiety is very different to other people's, and they may not understand mine, but it's mine,
Yeah.
and I get it now.
Yeah.
So it's weird, it's wonderful, and it's helped me and hurt me and done all the.
I mean, I think that's a good call out that like our anxieties are like kind of personalized. Like how we experience the pain in ourselves, it is a personalized thing. Everything about us is a personalized. I like to say we live very personalized existences. Like everything from even like the scene that we take in with our eyes goes through like many filters of like biases in our minds that shapes how we even see the world and experience the world before we even can think about the things that we're experiencing.
Yeah, and your community, your family, your friends are going to shape what your effect is on everything.
Oh yeah.
So, and not everyone's like I think we talked about the word sonder, that everyone is living a very vivid individual life, and every other person is just a bystander and just a character in that story, but you're always the main character. I think it's really cool to think about, but yeah, you can't compare. Like someone's anxiety might be tiny, but to them, like their outbursts are very small, but to them, it's the biggest rock that they're holding.
Yes.
Whereas someone having outwardly huge panic attacks, they might not feel as much inside. They just have an outward explosion of it, and then they're fine again. It's varied.
Yeah. The things that come out and that you are consuming from other people or perceiving about other people, it's only a very small fraction of what's going on inside them.
God, yeah.
That's what I titled this I call this your authentic chaos, because to me yourself is chaotic. I'm seeing very small fragments of what is actually going on in your head, in what you're choosing to express by the words you say, the movements you do, but I don't have all the context behind all of those.
Yeah.
You do though. And understanding what that chaos looks like, because there's an order behind it. There's some sort of structure behind it. That structure is your values. That structure is ultimately you, your inner voice.
Yeah.
And when you understand that, like you can present like the version of yourself to the world that is most authentically you.
I think that's so true. I love the chaos as well. I describe a lot of life as it's a beautiful chaos.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, you can either get swept up in the chaos or you can enjoy it. It's like either getting stuck in a hurricane or a roller coaster ride. They're both chaotic, but some's viewed as a bit more bad. But other people are just like, oh, I love this roller coaster. This is chaotic and fun. And it's just, it takes work to find the beauty in the chaos of it. And not everyone is going to appreciate it, and they're going to really struggle. I mean, as I was talking about with Buddhism today, they actually say to exist is to suffer. That is part of their mantra, because they know that life is hard.
Yeah.
It's not meant to be easy. You're going to get through like lots of failures. You're going to struggle, but you're going to exist and you're going to work on it and just try to be a good person. Try to help your community.
Yeah. And to go to a little bit of a French philosopher's René Descartes, everyone knows to think, therefore I am.
Yes.
They don't know the first part of that, though.
Oh, I don't know it.
I doubt, therefore I think. So it's not that the ability to think is what proves your existence. It's really the ability to question.
Yeah.
And so I love questioning. I love questioning myself and like the things that I think and feel, and the things that like other people think and feel, because when you start to question the things that you take for granted, that's when you start to really understand yourself.
And I think that's really good as well, because the first word I always use to describe myself is inquisitive. And I was homeschooled up until high school, which really pushed my curiosity because to learn something, I had to find that information out. There
Yeah.
was curriculums to still follow, but for me to learn, I had to ask the questions. I had to drive my learning. I had to seek out answers, which is pretty much what's led me through my life. I wasn't ever told, and it wasn't just provided to me. I had to seek constantly. So I do always ask more questions than not. I'm that person in the meetings. I go, I have a question.
And that's great because, like you've seen on the bus, like you'll be like, "Any questions?" and like no one asks a question.
No,
Not that like none of us have any questions, but like
yeah,
sometimes we feel like ashamed for having asking questions or something like that.
yeah.
Or like,
And I'm like, questions are the spice of life. You're gonna
yeah,
learn, you're gonna grow, you're gonna expand your mind. And it doesn't matter if it's a dumb question. I don't care. So, I mean, I do pass around the sheets on the bus to get people, because that's sometimes a little bit less intimidating for them to
yeah,
write
yeah,
down the
definitely.
questions rather than vocalize. But, whatever helps people get those questions out, which I like.
Yeah.
Hmm.
So I want to go back to your homeschooling. Like, so it sounds like you had a very much more intentional way of learning than
Yeah.
like most people do. Like most people, myself included, went through like grade school and all that stuff, and like basically taught like we were taught like we were lectured to most of the
Yeah,
time. But like you had to actually go and like find things out.
I did.
So yeah, so it makes it, having known you for this past week, it makes a lot of sense because you are very intentional and you do like question a lot. So
Yeah.
do you think that that was like a core part of like shaping you to be this?
Oh, fully. Although I didn't love being homeschooled. It wasn't something I was super
Yeah, yeah,
excited about.
we're not like glamorizing homeschooling
No,
here. I'm
oh
just
gosh,
saying
it's
it was. I'm just saying this is a testament to you overcoming.
yes, overcoming the homeschool. Yeah, it was funny because when we were in the States, it was mainly because my mom didn't want to keep pulling us out of school in and
Oh,
out of school because we
that
were
makes sense.
traveling.
Yeah,
But she dropped out of school at 16, so she didn't really know what she was teaching us.
yeah,
She was provided curriculums and would give us books, my sister and I, and she's like, "Oh, learn this." And we had structure to our day. She made sure that we had structure, but for her, it was a little bit more difficult. And yeah, we just had to read books and go. We went to the library so often. My mom made that a reward if we did our chores and were well behaved. So the library became this really, really fun thing to go to, and I would read up on new books and encyclopedias, and I just found that so fascinating, and I got joy out of learning, which is funny because when I went to high school, and I went to public high school in the United States, it was very structured, and I wasn't able to learn what I thought would be enjoyable in a way. It was more teaching to memorize, and I was like, oh, well, that's not what I want to
yeah.
do. I don't need to memorize this. I want to learn. So although I did well in school, it was a struggle. I really found it quite frustrating a lot.
Yeah. Okay. So I want to kind of shift back to travel, but I think some of these talks on intention and like questions will be really relevant to that. So what? So you see a lot of people, like
Yeah.
through your being a trip manager, probably many veteran travelers as well as novice travelers. What would you say to a novice traveler who wants to enjoy or at least get the most out of their travel experience?
I mean, I obviously will testify to group travel because it does take that fear that I think a lot of people have. They don't know what to do. They don't know where they're going. They don't know what to trust, what to eat, where to. It's a whole bunch of stuff. If you're, a green traveler, a new traveler, if you have someone that you can trust, but I always say that you grow outside of your comfort zone. So don't just stay at really nice like Hilton's or anything. Try something new. Go somewhere that maybe is a bit more local or go on like a big hike somewhere that you wouldn't do before. Try the street food. Do something that's a little bit scary, but it's not a big risk. It's going to push you a little bit further outside your comfort zone, but oh, the reward. It's amazing.
If you can do it with friends that you make on the trip or like other people in your life,
Yeah.
even better.
I have so many of my past travelers I've been doing this 5 years, and they still keep up to this day. And it's amazing to see, these friendships and relationships and form, and they still hold true today. And even if, they're on different continents and they haven't talked for years, seeing them still wish each other happy birthday or talk in the group chat every now and then. It's these bonds that you get to create these memories with these new people that you wouldn't have with anyone else.
Yeah, no, that's beautiful. And like, yeah, one of the consistent things I've heard from people on this trip is that they've noticed that other people seem to be like showing their true selves. I think that's more, I think it's less of a reflection on the others though, and more a reflection on them.
Yes. Because with that, I always say when you come on these trips, you're not surrounded by work, by your routines, by your friends and family. You are reliant on yourself. So all the things that you would normally attach yourself to, be like, oh, I work in a restaurant. I'm an engineer. I'm so and so's daughter. This is my friend. Like those all of a sudden drop away. So you have to identify as who you are in general, and it strips away a lot that you don't realize attaches to your identity.
Yeah. I've actually talked about that before on this podcast. Regular listeners will know that, like, I've talked a lot about, because I've thought about a lot about these, I call them collective narratives, and how these things that, like, we define as a society as, like, an important part of identity. And then we kind of take parts of that. So things like nationality, religious identity, occupation, these are things that, like, don't really define you as a person, but we've collectively identified as like identities, just to make it easier for society to function. And it's easy to like take those and like have those take up a lot of space in your mind where your like personal identity would be.
Yeah, and I think that's what's beautiful when I see people come and travel, whether they're on my tour or not. They really do find out who they are. Because I think of, as you described, nationality, religion, your jobs. It's like items of clothing, and they're just shedding it.
Yeah.
And they're just taking off the layers, and then they're like, oh, this is who I am? I haven't seen my skin in so long. Like, it's just all these analogies I think of in that way. But it's just reconnecting with who you are without these bonds to other things.
Yeah, that are like tethering you away from you.
Yeah.
I like to also say that, like, as I've traveled, I first traveled to find the differences. Now I travel to find the similarities. Like, we are very similar ultimately. Like, even as we were going through, like, we were driving through the mountains of Laos today, I was just like, all throughout my time in Laos, I had this feeling of Armenia.
Oh wow, really?
Everything from the towns to the food to the mountains, to it being a landlocked country that's been forgotten about by the world and is stricken by conflict for many, many years. All of these reminded me of like a place that really should have no comparison to Laos, but like it just feels that way to me.
That's incredible. I mean, I personally don't know as much about Armenia, but as I'm sure you wouldn't know as much about Laos until after this.
Yeah.
And I think that's what travel is so important for, because there are so many stories around the world, and that's when you connect. Like, oh my gosh, we have a similar, background, a similar history. Like, we can connect on these human levels that we've gone through trials, tribulations, and, wars a lot that can connect people. But I think it's really cool that Armenia and Laos have, the geographical connection and, having a bit of a forgotten about sense in the world.
Yeah, and like the kindness of the people.
Oh, they're
like
beautiful here.
The wholesomeness of the food.
Yeah.
It just all kind of like linked me back to like my ancestral home. Yeah.
I think that's really important to find. Again, you travel to sometimes just find yourself, but you can connect to your heritage through travel as well, and it doesn't have to be your own country.
Yeah. And one thing I've really appreciated as I've traveled and like learned about history and just cultures is that I found cycles that like people say that like history doesn't repeat itself, but it often rhymes. I think that can be even true for like for different cultures and peoples. Like, even if we grew up in different parts of the world, like when you strip away all of the like the resources you had available to you, a lot of the developments are very similar. Like
Yeah.
you find like the things that you can start creating for trade, and then that becomes a big part of the culture, like how families are structured and how like
Yeah.
just how like towns are structured around like religious centers, like our main roads are constructed and like where roads are placed. Like a lot of these aren't like random and aren't like really
No.
that different across the world. And so like I then like to extend that and say like, well, you know, that's looking at people on a broader level, but what about like us on an individual level? Like we carry with I like to say I carry with me, I am not just me when I'm talking about who I am. I am the story of my parents, and they're the story of their parents, and they're the story of their people that came before. So with us, we carry this story of like a species that came from very little and is trying to figure out our place in this crazy universe.
The chaos.
The chaos, yeah.
Yeah, and I feel like the people here as well, they probably do have a better sense of connection to community and family than I would say for me in New Zealand. I wouldn't be able to name anyone past my great grandparents. And I think we do lose a lot of that. And again, I'm going back to like the social media side. I still use social media, I'm not against it. But you lose those connections that aren't in your face all the time. And I don't think my great grandparents had TikTok or Instagram.
I'd say probably not.
No, they just missed out. So you do lose a bit of that. And I think it's good when you can learn about your family history and your genealogy. And that's really cool if you have those. I wish I had more of mine. And I think over here they do, in Southeast Asia, I mean, they do hold a lot more of the family values than more so we do back home, where it's very individual kind of nature to things.
Yeah. That's also very similar in Armenia. Like
Yeah.
family is a core center of each of the communities.
I love that.
Yeah, it is really lovely because you feel so supported.
I think that's important, like not having that support network. That's where people can really stumble.
Yeah, I think that's another reason why people like these group tours, because, like you said, it's a great way for you to be you, and then I like to say that like when you are you, when you're authentic to yourself, it's easy to find people that you will have a strong connection with.
Yeah, 100%. I think that's why when people come off these trips and they're so close to people, you know, there's tears when they say goodbye. And sometimes they've only known each other a week, 2 weeks, but there's this immense bond because you've had such a unique experience and you haven't worried about all those extra layers that you usually have to worry about back home. And you're like, wow, I really formed a connection authentically. And I think it's beautiful. I get to see it every day, and it's the biggest reward out of getting this job.
Oh, I can imagine.
I love it.
I can see that as like a huge reason why you still do it.
Yeah, massive. I think I've described it to you this way. If I haven't, I described this like Christmas Day. But I'm like the mom in the corner. I know it's in all the presents, and I'm just waiting for everyone to open it. I'm like, I can't wait for you to see this. And that could be the bonds with the other travelers. It could be, you know, seeing the mountains in Vang Vieng for the first time. It could be going to the temple for the first time. It's just these little captures of memories and moments. And I just can't wait for people to have that present, that moment. That's what I wait for. And sometimes it is like the whole trip is just meeting someone, meeting a group of people, and that is what the memory is.
Yeah. So we talked a little bit about the novice traveler. What advice would you have to a veteran traveler?
It's actually going to be one of my tattoos now is be here now.
Ooh.
Be in the moment. I think sometimes it's very easy. I'm guilty of it as well, where you've traveled and you've seen these beautiful places all the time. You're like, yeah, that's nice. And you lose that moment of being like, I am here right now. Like, I am present. I am here. I'm able to, you know, smell these smells I've never had before, these sights. Like, you've got to appreciate the moment. And sometimes people get a bit numb to it, or they're wanting to just take the videos and the content for it and not appreciating like what brought them to that moment, where they are, like that they may not have that moment again.
Yeah.
It's being present in it.
That's beautiful. Absolute poetry. That's so mindful. It's very, very Buddhist.
Yes.
It reminds me of there's a famous Buddhist monk. I don't remember his name. Thich something. He's a
Thich
bit.
Van Doc?
Maybe
This is the Vietnamese
the
one.
Vietnamese one. Yes.
Yeah,
Yes, yes,
Thich Van Doc. Oh,
yeah,
I have
yeah,
a
yeah,
beautiful
yeah.
story about him. We'll have to talk about him later.
I'd love to hear it.
Yeah.
We'll see. We'll see if we have time on
Yeah,
this
yeah.
podcast. But like I remember like one of his sentences that like really stuck to me is, "I have arrived. With every
Yeah.
step you take, you have arrived. We are always in the present moment."
So yeah, that's poignant. That's very true.
And I like to say, I like to find the thrill of the present moment.
Yeah.
Even here today, like we're just sitting down having a chat. We're not like seeing something crazy. We're not like doing like some extreme activity. We're just having a chat and like
Yeah.
really diving deep into something, and like just being present in this moment is magical in itself, because there's so much complexity in this
Yeah.
life.
I think everyone's waiting for that rush moment where it's like, okay, but what are we doing next? Where are we going next?
Uh,
It's like, you're here. You're here now. And it's like, no one else is here right now. Like, you are. It doesn't worry, like, other people
don't worry
might be
about the
doing-
other stories.
No,
This is your story.
this is your story. This is the time to write that book. You got to write that sentence, start the pages again. And it's so, I love, like, when people, I can look at them and I'm like, they're here now. They are here now. Even just when I was in my room before, I looked out at my window and I could see some of the others just over the pool, and I could see them looking out at the mountains that are in the background. They're beautiful, by the way.
Absolutely beautiful.
And I could tell, like, they weren't talking. I was like, oh, they're here. They're here now. They're in the moment. And I was like, yes. It's so beautiful.
Yes, it really is. But I also think that the magic of the moment doesn't just have to be when you're traveling.
Oh, no, not at all. It can be the moment of going to a little cafe and having the best pastry ever, or just having that time to
Maybe
read
not
a
even the best
book.
pastry, just like
Just a pastry.
a pastry. Just like giving yourself that time to
Mm-hmm.
maybe enjoy that ray of sun.
Yeah.
Like for me, like sometimes when I'm like finishing up a yoga session and the sun hits my face just right in my apartment, that is the most magical
Mm-hmm.
moment.
Yeah, I think it's just capturing little moments that you can just be in the moment. You're not worried about, okay, so at 5 o'clock, I've got to just stop, look out. You could be in your room, be like, oh, wow, I really like what I've done with my room. This is mine. Or just like walking. I remember walking to my bus stop when I was in Australia just to work. That was my moment before I knew I was going into the office when I used to be corporate. Um, and I'd just be walking. I was like, it's a really nice day. I would just take a moment to appreciate where I was before I was stuck in an office. Like, it's a really nice day. Okay, we can go on the bus now. Just little moments, but you just gotta appreciate being there now.
And even like, maybe we should stop calling them little moments, because there's so much more than
Yeah,
that.
it's true.
Like some of these moments are magical. Like, so my post waterfall meditation reflection was that, so we had all gone up Mount Fuji in
Luang Prabang.
Bang, and we were like trying to watch the sunset, but like it was very smoky, so you really couldn't see anything. But as I was sitting there, and I think the others had left at that point, I was just reflecting on, even though I can't see the sunset, I know that those colors are there. I know that behind that smoke, it is probably a gorgeous sunset. And then it really made me think, like, do I need to observe a moment to experience the moment? Or is the important thing that I intentionally sought it out and was present for it?
I mean, those are the things that might create a memory. It doesn't have to be as black and white in front of you and be like, this is an amazing thing. It could be like, okay, like a lot of people do when they travel, get overhyped about certain places, and they get desperate to have that perfect moment. And even just getting to the point where you might not have the perfect view, or it might be raining the whole time, you're still there. You're still experiencing it, and you know that that moment is yours. No one else is going to create that moment like you do. And it's just making sure you appreciate it, good or bad.
Yeah.
Sometimes it doesn't have to be good moments, but you could be monsoon rain.
And I'd say we should remove even the judgment of good or bad.
Yeah.
Good or bad is our ego telling us like we should like this or we should not like
Yeah,
it.
that's true.
And it's keeping us from actually like being present.
I always say, like, when people travel, even if you didn't enjoy something, it's going to either make you appreciate what you have back home, be like, oh, I really didn't enjoy all the food of this place. But you know what I love is that one little shop down the road from my house. That's my favorite. It makes you appreciate it more. So there's no negative in traveling. You will always come back either appreciating what you have more, or it's going to increase your taste to travel the world and decrease your bank account.
True. I will say on the veteran travelers thing, I have met people who've traveled way more than I have. Like I really haven't. I've only been to like 20 countries at 32.
Still a lot.
It's a lot. It is definitely a lot. But I've met people who've been to like double that, like at a younger age. But like, I remember distinctly, I've asked people like this, like, okay, well, what are some of your favorite travel moments? And they're like, whatever. They just sort of list off a lot of things without really like showing the feelings behind it.
Yeah. And I think people, it's a bit hard today because people are trying to tick off a bucket list, be like, I want to hit 50 countries by time. I'm like, what do you want to do? Like, do you want to work in a certain community for a little bit? Is it like, I don't care what number you've gone to. It's not important. Like, tell me about what you did there. Like, don't tick off a list just to
What did it feel like?
Yeah.
What did the air smell like? What did the food taste like?
What were the people like? Like, experience it. You were at the jungle rafts in Kanchanaburi in Thailand, and I mentioned a few times that place holds really special to my heart because I remember that's what captured me in Thailand before I became a trip manager. And I remember getting there. I have never experienced anything like it. And, you know, there's no electricity, and it's in the jungle, and you're on these...
And you're literally floating on the river.
Yeah. I remember, and it was so outside of my comfort zone. You know, I was in a very corporate office role back in Australia. I had a nice room and a decent car, and I'd been used to very routine. Being there, and I was like, it's a basic room. There's cold water. There's no electricity. And it was the most magical time ever. And I stayed up until about 2 a.m. talking with about 7 other travelers in my group at that time. And we bonded so intensely that we still talk today. And that was 2017.
Beautiful. That's beautiful.
And it's just that moment of there was nothing else to distract us. We had the river, the sound of the river. You could hear a bit of the like bats or noises from just nature around. And we just got to connect, and it was like the place is amazing and beautiful, but it was the moment of feeling just at peace and calm, but having this real human connection with someone else. And that's why we still talk today. And I'm sure if I'm ever in LA or Perth or Chicago, Brisbane, wherever they are, all dotted around the world, that we will instantly catch up. We've caught up a few times since.
That's so lovely.
So I think like having people really appreciate where they are. So for the veteran traveler, it is making sure that they're not having like, okay, well, I want to see India and Nepal and Mongolia. It's like, okay, but what do you want to do there? Where do you want to go? Like, don't just be like, I want to tick it off. I see a lot of people do that.
Oh yeah, I can imagine. After a point, you're like, I feel like after a point when you've been to so many, you're like, okay, well now I need to hit the rest.
Yeah. I would suggest to the veteran travelers, find an experience that you really would like to do. For me, I went to Turkey because I wanted to do the hot air balloon.
Yeah.
Best moment of my life. Loved it. But I would say find something like an experience. If food is your thing, what kind of food do you like? Do you want to try something new and spicy? Yeah. Asia?
Asia's excellent for that.
Yeah. So I think there's moments that veteran travelers probably need to pull back from.
Do you need to take a little break?
Oh, no, it's just the cough still. This is part of the work as well, I would say, is not getting enough rest. I'm talking too much on a microphone. But no, it's fine.
Yeah, so I'm torturing her right now by having her be on a podcast.
No, this is fine. This is just another day in the life now. But yeah, I would just test veteran travelers to make sure that they're not just going through routine, that they're wanting to travel for a specific experience, or if they're like, I just think Iceland would be amazing to view, the glaciers.
Yeah.
Do that.
Yeah.
Go like have a little bit of a goal that you want to get there, not just I want to go to Iceland because it looks cool. Be like,
I will say, like, I really didn't have like a goal coming in. I kind of wanted to. I had never been to Southeast Asia. It was just a place I wanted to experience for myself, but I don't like to go into trips with too many like preconceived notions about what I want to get out of it.
That's another. It can go onto the extreme. So I would say, even just saying I've never traveled to this side of the world, that's a goal in itself.
Oh, true. That's fair.
So that's why it doesn't have to be too specific, but saying I've never seen that side of the world. Like I want to go to the Eastern Bloc of Europe for the fact that I've never seen that side. It's very different to the culture I've come from. That's my goal, is to experience a culture shock of, Hungary and Belarus, and I want to see those countries. So even going with the goal that you don't know what you want to do, but you know that you've never experienced it and you're open to it, that's a goal in itself.
Yeah, and I'm open to experiences.
Yeah, and there's lots of experience here.
Yeah. There's a lot of yourself to experience too.
Yeah, I find people go back home, and the amount of travelers I see that actually go back home and they make career changes, they make relationship changes, they move. It's not an insignificant number.
I bet. Yeah.
Because they come back and I say, when you've traveled, you have changed. The rest of your family, friends, your routines have not. So you come in and you start that ripple effect, and things start rocking around you, and you either ride with it and you wait until it flattens out, or you change. Yeah. It's very interesting to see. Yeah.
I would say though, if you're thinking about making big changes like that, just be intentional about it.
Yeah, I'm the worst person to actually say. I'm very impulsive. But I think there is an element to impulsiveness that needs to have intentional meaning behind it. You can have fun intentions, I would say fun impulsives, but I do make quite impulsive decisions, but I do think about them.
Yeah.
So when I moved to Southeast Asia, I had just come back from a trip in Indonesia and fell in love with Asia, fell in love with this role itself. Didn't think I could do it. And I was like, you know what? I'm young now. I was 28. Yeah. Young. I just
plenty young.
Plenty young. And I was like, I should just do this. Yeah. Like the rest, I can always come back to a corporate job. I can always get a house. I can always buy another car. I can always do these other things, but there's something about just stepping off the cliff is terrifying, but sometimes it's the best thing you can do for yourself. If you know in yourself you're not happy. And the reason why this job was interesting to me, because the trip manager actually asked me, she goes, "Are you happy?" I was like, "Yeah, I've got a good job, and I have good friends back home, and I'm gonna hopefully build a house soon." That is not what I asked. I asked if you were happy. And in that moment, I was like, am I? It turned me.
This is the power of the simplest questions. Mm-hmm. It gets you to just stop a little bit and think.
Yeah. So as much as I promote just doing things, I think people will sometimes question doing stuff because of what society is telling them. I'm too old to do this. I'm too young to do this. I should be at the stage in my life. I should be married. I should have kids. I should have the house. There's all these things that they are putting pressure on from outside sources. What do you want? If you are a few of my friends, and their paths are very different to mine, they love that they're in committed relationships and they're building houses and they're having children. And for them, that's their path, and they would love that. And then I see some people who are trying so hard to force it. I'm like, that's not your path.
Yeah.
Listen to yourself.
It really is it's as simple and as difficult as listen to yourself.
Mm-hmm. It took me years.
Yeah, it's a constant journey. I feel like sometimes I still don't listen to myself.
Oh God, no. Yeah. I think the second that you think it's figured out, that's where you're failing.
Yeah.
Yeah. You can't ever have it figured out. And that's, the question, what's your plan in the next 5 years? I hate that.
Yeah. Me too.
And I always now refer back to COVID. I'm like, did you predict COVID happening?
Yeah.
No.
Right.
I was like, the people that thrived during that were the people that didn't have the 5-year, 10-year plans. Because we were just like, oh, I guess this is happening now. It's great to have goals. But for my lifestyle, asking that question, I'll be like, as long as I'm happy.
Yeah. I think that's an important thing. I like to say, like, I mean, from the outside, I think people assume that I've got like a lot of things figured out goal wise, or like that I'm very like pretty reserved or like whatever. But really, like, I don't know what's going on. I have no idea what's going on with it in life. I'm just taking it day by day. I'm living in the present, and I'm following my heart and like following my authentic chaos, if you will, and just listening to myself and seeing where that leads me. I do have some like shining stars that guide me in the night, in the darkness, but I don't know where this journey is going to take me.
Yeah, but there's beauty. And like, I referring back to my book reference, how boring is the story once you know the ending?
Yeah. Well, but
we know the
ultimate
ending, but
it's also, it can still be beautiful.
Yeah.
Because the journey itself can be very complex and winding.
Yeah.
And I like to say that, like, I like to say with my friends that, like, I may be a little bit further along on my journey of understanding myself. That's why I may not like guide you. I may not hold your hand, but I'll put out little signposts saying, "Oh, this way is this way is that." Like, you might want to check this place out. Whatever.
Yeah, I think leading by example is really good. I think I'm up to 3 travelers now who have quit their jobs and moved over to Asia.
Oh, wow. Way to lead by example.
Yeah, I can just see a moment. You can tell when people are sitting there, maybe not as happy with their life, and just kind of asking those questions, like, what is it that you would like to do? Do you want to be working, like one person was working in accounts, and she's like, I don't know, I hate it. I was like, okay. Take away, if there was no barriers, what would you do? And she's like, I don't know. I just like lie on a beach and go scuba diving. I'm like, what's stopping you? And now she lives in Koh Tao, and she works with the hostel, and she goes on boats every day. And she's having a great time.
Yeah.
And you know what? She can always return to that life as well. It's not a permanent change. It could be. I mean, I haven't asked her if it's permanent, but I think just doing something for yourself, your soul is asking for something to be done, and listening to it, feeling it. It's going to be different for everyone. Don't listen to what other people are telling you to do. Take their advice sometimes. Like, don't ignore them and be like, you don't know. People do have good intentions behind advice. But ultimately, if you want to just break free for a little bit, join Neverland for a little bit, or if you want that comfort and security of, getting better in your job and developing new skills, and finding family.
And I'd say Neverland can be different things to different people. For me, like, a lot of my journey happened, like my inward journey happened during COVID, where like I couldn't really travel anywhere because like there were lots of restrictions. So I like to say that I may not have traveled the world, but I traveled myself.
Oh, that's a good one. Yeah. But I think COVID's a great definition of Neverland. We were in time suspended, and we had to figure out new ways of doing things and exploring. And I don't know if I use a lot of Peter Pan references.
I've kind of noticed.
I have it tattooed on my back. I kind of feel like I have to. If you think of Hook and the Lost Boys with the marbles, each of the marbles is a little happy memory. And just trying to find how to add those marbles, like what are you gonna use? Like, what is those happy moments that you can create to get a new marble to add to those times where you are going through something tough or things aren't going your way? Yeah. You've got to pull back and be like, all right, these are little moments that I can appreciate that I used to have, I can get again.
Yeah, and that's where like I couldn't travel, which I loved to do prior to COVID, but I did start to like build deeper connections with like people that weren't in my life before, like with total strangers, and now some of them are my best friends in this world. And like just those connections and like learning through their lived experiences and opening myself to other like other like philosophies. Like that's when I really started to pick up mindfulness and like
Yeah.
start to understand myself. And like it's not something that many people will ever appreciate, but like I don't need them to appreciate it. It's not something I'll ever be able to Instagram
No,
or like put in a
no.
TikTok video, but it's like something that like created this calmness within me and this like this light and this aura or whatever you want to call it that like I feel very strongly, and I think other people feel too.
Well, you can see that radiate off you as well. How the group connects with you and feel like you're probably the one that has had the most deep conversation with people.
Yeah,
I don't think that's a coincidence.
par for the course.
So I think that's it. Definitely, whatever you feel inward does radiate outwards. There's only so much you can hide, but people will definitely give off vibrations and energy to each other. So you've definitely got that. You can tell that you've got a lot of mindfulness and you're got some wisdom and inner peace, I would say, but still working on it, like a chaotic inner peace. If
Yeah,
if you may.
yeah.
But yeah, I think that's why people are attracted to talking to you and having those open conversations.
Yeah, I appreciate the compliment. I did not mean this to become like a.
No, it was just
but-
yeah. Just felt like the right time to let you know.
I appreciate it. I appreciate it. So we've been going on for about an hour, and I'm sure our listeners would appreciate to wrap it up in a time.
Absolutely fine.
So, do you have any final thoughts before we conclude?
I would just say your soul's path is this individual path, and as long as you listen to it, it can't steer you wrong. And be here now.
Be here now. I love that, and I love following your soul's path. And if you don't know what your soul's path is yet, just maybe ask simpler questions to you. Like,
Yeah.
does this moment feel right to me? Am I enjoying this moment? Or would I enjoy something else?
100%.
Well, thank you so much, Elle, for joining me in this conversation. This is truly lovely.
Thank you so much. I really had fun here. Thank
I
you.
did too. And thank you for listening. And as always, embrace your chaos. Thank you so much.